Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. You guys know who it is. This is Tony Lynch. I am the host of this podcast, and yes, we are your number one podcast for bringing you stories around death, down, and grief, but all the messiness that comes in between with some amazing people out here changing people's lives one heartbeat at a time. Now, before I bring on my next guest, I would like to say, if this is your first time tuning in, do me a favor, head on over to the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification, so you'll be notified every time that we drop a new episode. Also, this is for educational purposes only. Without further ado, I'm going to bring on my guest, guys.
Hey, Tony.
Becky, how you doing?
I'm great.
I got kind of stuck there for a little bit. I was like, hold on, that's supposed to be adding some more stuff in.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's a Wednesday. It's definitely a Wednesday. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be here with you. You know, and I'm definitely looking forward to sharing your story with the audience. Now, before we get started, do me a favor, introduce yourself to everyone. Tell people who you are, where you're from, and about the work that you do.
Okay, so who I am, that's a work in progress. How about that? A homeschooler, a Coast Guard mom, just kind of doing my thing here. I'm in Orlando, Florida now. And as far as work goes, I help seasoned entrepreneurs who go blank, spiral, or stall when they're trying to articulate their messages alone, show the version of themselves that they've always meant to show off in a co-regulated, coached interview with real-time feedback that surfaces clarity that they can trust and delivers content that they're proud to share. So that's what I do for work.
Nice. I love that. Now, How did you get into this line of work? Because you have an amazing story as well.
How did I get into this? Interviews. I've been doing interviews since I was 13 years old on my school newspaper in middle school, and I continued through my 20s and 30s as a freelance writer. All of that was back before all of this stuff. No YouTube, no internet until my later days as a freelance writer. But after my marriage blew up and I needed to figure out how I was going to support myself because I'd been a stay-at-home mom for the entire time, I decided I would go back to two things that I really loved. First one was teaching English language arts to homeschooled kids. That wasn't scalable in a way that I wanted to scale, and it took me too much away from my daughter, my youngest daughter, who needed me at the time. And then interviews. So I was like, okay, well, I love doing interviews. I'm good at it. What can I do with that? And so I started kind of shaping this offer, and it's a new offer, but I'm not a new interviewer.
Okay. And what was that journey like for you?
Ooh.
Like, what was some of the challenges that you had to overcome in order to become the amazing person that you are today? Because you have a grief journey as well, right? That you've gone through, and share that with the audience.
Okay. So at the end of 2018, I issued my husband an ultimatum to get help or get out. He was eyeballs deep in an addiction to alcohol that had gutted him, hollowed him out, and had changed him into somebody unrecognizable. We had 20 years of the 30 that we were ultimately together that were very, very good years. He was overwhelmingly a good husband and a good father, but addiction did what addiction does, and he chose neither. And so I took our kids, who were then 20. Our oldest had stayed home after he graduated because he didn't want to leave me and his sisters alone with their dad. That's telling. I never asked him to do that, but I couldn't have, I was grateful to have him there. Then our second child was 17 at the time, and our youngest was 10. So I took them and we went to a hotel, and I filed for an order of protection at that point.
Uh-oh, you freeze.
Did I freeze? No, I don't know.
Coming from.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with the connection. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with the connection.
Yeah, it happens. It's been happening a lot more throughout the world. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, you know what I'm saying? We get through it though. We get through it. Not a problem.
Perfect. All right. Where do I pick up? Just I basically I ended up leaving. Filed for an order of protection, and then he ended up embroiled in the state's mental health system, which I'm sure you probably know doesn't do any good. I think it actually made him worse. And by 2020, our son had left to enlist in the Coast Guard, and he was sent across the world to Guam for his first duty station. And then COVID shut everything down, and my dad died, all within the space of less than a month.
Wow.
So,
and you know, COVID was it was definitely a life lesson. You know, for a lot of people as well. A lot of people lost family members during that time. You know, it made it real hard for us as a society to even function. You know, but it did. But there was a couple things that when COVID happened, that was I find that was a true blessing. It brought a lot of things to the forefront, right? It exposed what people have been hiding for years and years and years. Um, and going back to what you were saying before, you know, and I have to say this because being a person who struggled with alcoholism, you know, I could tell you the challenges. It's not when it was it was hard for me to put the bottle down,
mhm.
right? And I was that way for over 20 years, and I've been clean and sober now for 18, or going on 18.
Congratulations.
And yeah, it wasn't easy, but it was
Yeah.
a decision that I made. Had it not been for my son, I don't think I would ever stop drinking. Right, I would probably drink myself into a coma or even worse. And so when you speaking of that, that kind of touched me because I can I don't- I can see why he did it, but I couldn't like he had the option to be a good father and a good husband to you. And he
Mhm.
chose the bottle. Now I get it. Addiction is a monster, right? It will
Mhm.
do things to you and take you down a road that, you know, that's
Absolutely.
questionable. That's very, very questionable, right?
Mhm.
So now going back to what you're saying, what you had talked about, you know, you got your alcoholic husband going through and you're trying to get him to help and he's choosing not to. You got kids that's watching everything, and then you lose your father. How are you navigating this?
um, well, we made a disastrous attempt at a reconciliation in 2023 that culminated with him committing a crime that finally hit up against one of my very few boundaries. I called the police, had him arrested. It was a very noisy thing. They shut down the entire block and arrested him at gunpoint and took him away. I went no contact with him that night. Um, and detoxing from the kind of the trauma bond essentially that I had with him was very difficult. I was shell shocked for a couple, for a good long while. I sold our house and took our youngest daughter. I did get his permission. And I went and traveled for about 7 months on the equity from the sale of our house, trying to figure out where I was going to go next time, where we were going to land, because we weren't going to stay there. I was afraid of him, and I didn't want to be where he knew where I was. And then once we decided we were going to come to Florida. We moved to a barrier island near Tampa Bay in July of last year. And in September, Hurricanes Helene and Milton rolled through, a direct hit on our area, destroyed the rental house that we were living in, and everything that we owned that we hadn't thought to take with us when we left.
That's whew.
Yeah, it's kind of a wild ride. How am I? I mean, I'm a little unhinged. What can I say? I mean, I lean into humor, and kind of just dry wit, and sort of kind of bully myself into being better. Like, hey, who's got time for your pity parties? No one. Get going. So,
Look, I understand to the choir. I definitely understand. I don't even sit there anymore. I just look at things and go.
yeah, it's like,
All I do, I just keep
what
moving.
you gonna do?
You don't have a choice, right?
Mhm.
You can either laugh at it, you can spend the time to see the humor in it, or you will spend a lot of time balled up into a corner, crying, trying to figure it out. Whereas, like I've just learned how to figure out things as I gotten older, or even throughout the course of the journey of life in general. So so now you moved to Florida. All of your stuff just got hit by the hurricane.
Yeah.
It's just a sequence of events that is just starting to pile up here, right? So what's next for Becky after that? What's going on next? Where's this road taking you?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So after the hurricanes, I was like, well, we don't have anywhere to live now. So and there were so many people displaced that I didn't even want to, sit around and figure it out. And I didn't want to navigate with FEMA and all that to try to get housing. So my youngest and I, we went and we spent 5 weeks in Mexico. I rented a place there for a month. It was cheaper than it would have been to continue to get a hotel here. And we scoped that out and had a great time. Then we came back and I signed a lease for a place in Orlando, and that's where we are now. And I started digging into my own issues. I've got a heavily primed and prompted custom GPT. I call it Vera, and it's my quasi therapist and research assistant and brainstormer and stuff. And I've began digging into the neuroscience of trauma and attachment wounds and grief and all that, and trying to get myself out of some really horrible spirals, and it's working to some degree. And then I was like, I bet these same very unhealthy patterns that are showing up in my personal life are also causing me problems in business, right? So I start digging into that, and just splits wide open. So here I am. Yeah, that's where I'm at right now. Is just seeing what happens next.
Yeah. Now, we talked about this before. I want to go back a little bit.
Perfect.
Because there was your son when you was with your husband, your son was always going to get him too, wasn't he?
Yeah, all of my kids, I've always homeschooled. I started homeschooling in 2003, the year that my son turned 5. My son is my only neurotypical child, and he's also a traditional classroom style learner, but he is energetic and inquisitive, and he will ask you 100 million questions why, and if you're wrong, he'll tell you you're wrong. And I was like, oh no, this kid's going to be a nightmare in school. I'm going to be at the principal's office all the time. They're going to want to medicate him, and he doesn't need medicating and yada. So I was like, okay, well, let's homeschool. And I started homeschooling and kept on homeschooling, and then homeschooled his sisters. And I've still got one at home. They're better off for having had me home and for not having to deal with a lot of the stuff that they would have dealt with in school. And being raised in a house where one parent is an alcoholic is traumatic and chaotic and crazy making. And it's, I carry some level of guilt and certainly a lot of regret for what my kids endured. I saw something maybe a couple years ago that was somebody in my position was saying, I thought I was showing my kids loyalty and unconditional love. and stuff. But what I was actually modeling to them was a very unhealthy relationship and very poor boundaries. And that hit. I was like, ooh, whew, yipes.
That is deep. Because of the simple fact of, as you were speaking about that, I know as a former parent myself, and I think we as parents, like I'm old school, so I taught my son, what I'm saying, I was teaching my son the right way. I always wanted him to be better than me, always, no doubt. And what I see a lot of times now is that parents spend too much time trying to be friends with their kids, right? And not really paying attention to what their kids are doing when it comes down to the growth aspect of them. And so it kind of hinders them in so many different ways. And it will begin to pose challenges. So I love the fact that you homeschool, because you were able to keep the school out of his life. Because you're right, they would have been like, "Oh, look at him; he needs to be medicated."
Yeah,
that was the one mistake that I made when my son was born. When he first started going to school, is that, and I didn't even make that mistake. His mother made that mistake, and they ended up putting him on clonidine, which was how everything kind of started, right? And no, that's not the way to be. It really isn't. What do you think about in your opinion, what are your thoughts on the schools having that much control over what we can and cannot do with our children?
Well, I didn't homeschool because I was one of those people who's, like, oh, I'm going to homeschool when I have my kids. And, it wasn't religious fundamentalism. It wasn't being a crunchy granola type. It was really, I didn't want to give the best hours of my kid's day to somebody else. Right. I was selfish.
Okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing.
My son had 2 years of 2 mornings a week preschool. It was a play-based preschool. There were 3 teachers and 10 kids, and he loved it. And I was so sick and tired of being a slave to the preschool calendar by the end of that time that I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I going to handle a regular public school calendar?
I was so tired of being a slave to it. Oh my God.
It was too long for me to stay there with my baby, because my oldest daughter was a baby when he went, and it was not long enough for me to go anywhere with her and have any fun, because I would have had to turn around and come get him shortly after that. So I was stuck. I couldn't do anything, anything fun. It was a drag.
Yeah. I can only imagine. I can only imagine, but you also had them when you was going through the things that you were going through as well. Now, you've talked about it from the perspective of, the adventure of being homeless and having all of your stuff destroyed by the hurricane and all of these different things. How did you help your kids navigate that, right? Because I know, kids will have like that, and they certainty, and as a parent yourself, how did you help them navigate that? But most importantly, how did you navigate the loss of your father?
Oh, okay. So a couple of that's a couple of different questions and different timelines. I'd like to be clear on the homeless part here. Yes, I was homeless, but no, I was not without resources. So, I'm not in the same boat that I could have been in. I had the resources to, go and rent something in Mexico for 5 weeks while I waited for the fallout in Florida and to see where I could possibly find a new place to live. So we weren't sleeping on the sidewalk or anything like that. It was just more upheaval for me and my daughter. Navigating it. So my older 2 kids are grown and married. They are on their own now, and have been for a while. So it's just been me and my youngest. that have really, had to deal with all of the stuff. My youngest was the only one at home when her dad did what he did in 2023. And she's the most damaged by it. My older two had the advantage of having him be a good father and a good husband overwhelmingly for most of their childhoods. She didn't. And it shows. My older two had the advantage of me being home and solely focused on them and the family and the house and their educations and cultivating a rich community. And my youngest doesn't. And it shows. I mean, my youngest is a wonderful, wonderful human being, but she has issues that my older two didn't have because the circumstances are different. And that's a bitter pill for me to swallow. I don't like it at all, but I can't do anything about it. It is what it is.
Right.
As for my dad, okay. So now we're rolling the dice here. It's 5 years out from my dad's death. I can talk about my dad. It appears that it's going to be fine. I can talk about my dad without dissolving into a puddle of tears about half the time now. And the other half of the time I end up a blubbering mess, and I can never tell until I start talking which one it's going to be. It's really unsettling. It makes me feel crazy. My dad died from sepsis. He had an AV malformation in his brain that ruptured. So I guess it's something like a stroke or something. I'm not really sure. On Thanksgiving Day in 2019. And he ended up in a nursing home that my parents were visiting me and my family at the time. He ended up in a nursing home to rehab near me, and my mom had to go home. He was supposed to recover. It was just going to be a grueling recovery. I don't believe that he believed he was going to recover. And neither does my mom. Shortly before we heard that COVID was likely going to shut everything down, my mom and my brother decided that they would come down and collect my dad because he was finally stable enough for them to move him and bring him back up to their home in Washington State. And so they did that. And my mom got some help, like nursing help with him. She took him to the hospital. One day she called me and let me know that, that they were doing that because he just seemed off. And she goes, "Oh, there's nothing, don't worry. Just wanted to let you know it's probably his meds or something like that." And then she called me a couple hours later and said, "You need to say goodbye to your dad. He has sepsis and they don't expect him to make it through the night." It was horrible, absolutely horrible. But in my mind, my dad had died Thanksgiving Day because he was never the same after that. And he would never have wanted to be like he was in between November and April. And so I was daddy's, if my dad was home.
It's okay. It's okay. Take your time. Please take your time. Right. I appreciate you being vulnerable. So please take your time. And I know it's hard. I really do. So whatever you need to do, take a breath, take the time. It's okay. It's your show. I'm here holding space with you. I'm here holding space with you.
The problem with crying is that it hurts my eyes. It's like burns. Anyway, he and I were very, very much alike, and I was always his. So having him gone, it's horrible. Yeah. He had a wicked, funny, sarcastic sense of humor that he was a jokester, and we had a lot of interests in common. And so we would, sit and shoot the shit. Stuff that my mom is wonderful. And I don't think my mom really understands me very well. She's
understood.
you know, she and my dad, you know, they're very different people. You know, the opposites attract kind of thing, you know. And my dad understood me because I was, you know, am essentially his female carbon. You know, and so it was always very easy for me to communicate with him, and we shared a lot of interests, and so we'd talk about, you know, hey, did you see this, or what do you think of this, or whatever, and you know, my dad was after my ex-husband started circling the drain, my dad became as much of a positive male presence in my kids' lives as he could possibly be from a distance. You know, I mean, we were in Arizona and they were in Washington, so it wasn't a thing where they could see my kids all the time. But they were, you know, my parents, and my mom continues to this day, very involved, as much as they possibly can be with my kids. And so I don't know. It sucks. It sucked. And the thing that I keep trying to do with my dad is, I know if he saw this, he'd be like, "Come on, Becky, what are you doing? That doesn't do anything." And if you only cry when you think about me, then don't think about me, because that's not what I want. And so, you know, I kind of, you know, whip myself back into shape that way. And I try to make him proud, try to honor his legacy, and keep going.
Yeah. You know, I definitely appreciate your vulnerability, and even sharing your emotions with me. You know, very, very heartfelt. Because as you was talking about that, I was being reminded of my dad, and you know what I went through with that. And yes, you're right. They're probably like, "What you doing this for?" And I would say, "You know what? Because my love has nowhere to go,
Mm-hmm.
and this is how I show how much I love you." This because I didn't get the chance to tell him right when he passed away. I didn't get the chance to tell my younger brother or my mother. You know, well, actually, my mother I got the chance to tell, but I didn't even get the chance to say, you know, I love you. My last I love you to my son until after he was already passed away. So when it comes down to it, you know, it's you are entitled to your emotions, and I think that they would understand. I really do. I think that they would understand because I think that in a lot of ways that's their way of telling you the same, right? As you're expressing it, and you get those emotions. I think that's the way our loved ones tell us that they love us as well, and that we're going to be okay, right? We're human beings. We are. We're human beings, and so it's expected to be a human. You
Yeah.
know, don't deny yourself that. Don't do that, right? You know, like we can laugh and everything, but when it comes down to it, it's uh, it's the natural way things are supposed to be. As much as we don't want to face the fact of, you know, this is our life,
Yeah.
and this is you can't have one without the other. I'm steadily
For
learning
real.
lessons as I
Yeah.
get older,
Yeah.
right? You know what I'm saying? I'm steadily learning lessons, and I appreciate the lessons that I learned
Mm-hmm.
from people, and you know, the challenges that I go, the adventures that I go on, and you know, there's always something to learn. Um, some lessons I don't care to learn anymore, but you
And
know,
you keep learning them until you learn them.
you know, um, I definitely appreciate that. But it's like, okay, so I want to take that and I want to add to it, right? Because yes, in the beginning, if you keep repeating certain things, right, you keep that lesson is there until you learn it.
Mm-hmm.
What I found was is that depending on the path that you're on in life, you're going to learn that lesson. Then something else is going to come along. People are going to teach you a different lesson, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and so you get good at learning the lessons because you're like, if I keep learning the lessons, it's going to lessen up a little bit. Now I have been pretty blessed and fortunate that they have come very few and far in between. Which a couple of days ago, I just learned another valuable lesson that I definitely appreciate, but it didn't have to go that way. But it's definitely a lesson that I appreciate from the individual who taught me the lesson, and just keep moving, just keep moving. Because what I realized what it does is that all of these different things keeps me aligned in a purpose and a path that I'm on. And I was just talking to my cousin earlier. I told him, I said, no one told me how lonely the path was going to be, but the lessons that I needed to learn. But I embraced it, right? And it just became one of those things I just got used to. Mm-hmm. During your journey, what was some of your experience and taking what you had to go through? How did you mold that to become who you are today? Now, I want to answer that question, but we are at the 30-minute mark, so
I was just looking at that.
Yeah, we're going to take a bit of a break. I got an infomercial for you guys. Guys, thank you for tuning in. And again, this is a live stream, so put your questions and comments in the comment section. We'll be sure to answer them as we go. We are streaming across all platforms, and we're going to see you guys here real soon, okay? See you guys shortly. All right, we are back. I do love those infomercials and the people who contributed to it and everything. I love being able to do things like that. So yeah, we are back. So going back to the question I posed, how did you take these things and be able to not only grow within it, but develop the mindset that you have to become the amazing person that you are today?
Okay, so there's a couple of things. In regards to say my dad, for example, I realized that the reason that it sucks and hurts so much is because he was such a fantastic father, and it's such a wonderful, loving presence in my life. If it didn't hurt this much, then that would mean that he wasn't this awesome, and I'm damn lucky to have been his daughter. My kids will not have that with their dad. They will not have the same sense of healthy loss. Like, I don't have any regrets with my dad other than I just didn't get as much time with him as I wished I had gotten. He knew that I loved him. I knew that he loved me. I spent as much time with him as I could, yada, yada. My kids have very complicated relationships with their dad that they wouldn't have otherwise had it had he been willing to face his addiction. Everything else, I mean, as I see it, you have two choices in life. You can let life make you bitter, or you can let it make you better. And I don't want to be a bitter old hag. It's just not something I want to do. And I'm down for a good pity party every once in a while, but I don't want to stay there. It's boring.
So, understood. Definitely understood.
Yeah, then it's just next right thing, and figuring out what my, tracing kind of my attachment wounds and core beliefs back to, where they all came from. I think that people assume that if you have attachment wounds, it's because you had bad parents. And that's not actually necessarily the case. A child can be wounded by something that it would fly right underneath their parents' radar. Otherwise loving and attentive parents who maybe, don't understand how expressive or emotional a child is and are trying to get that child to tamper down on that expressive emotional self, or neonatal trauma, which I had, childhood bullying, which I had from my peers in school. So, tracing the roots of why I am the way I am and why I allowed the things that I allowed, why I didn't put a stop to it earlier, understanding the science of it, not the, I don't care so much about the feelings too much. I care about why. Like, why did that happen? Why did I allow that? What was happening in my brain and in my in the brain chemistry and stuff that taught me that was what was going to happen, or that taught me that was what I should do instead of whatever. All lessons, all valuable lessons, I guess. I don't know if that answered the question or not, but
you did, because and it just goes back to what you were saying, and I want to touch on it a little bit more. I want to talk a little bit more about the addictive mind, and from what you've seen and the things that and your opinion on it as well. And I'm talking from a place of being a former alcoholic myself, right? And so one of the things that I've learned as I began to grow, I realized that it was multifaceted, right? Mm-hmm. There's a bunch of different scenarios or situations that you have to really put it into perspective. The emotional aspect of it is one of them, right? And what I find was, now I'm speaking from a place of being a male, men, we're not taught to deal with our emotions. We're not taught to be emotional whatsoever. So, but we are in a lot of ways. The problem is that that's the misconception. We feel things very deeply, but since we are not taught how to regulate them, we choose other things to numb them out, right? And then you have to really, really pay attention to the language that's being used. Most men that go into addiction, whether it's drugs or alcohol or women, right? Some people are addicted to fast cars. I was addicted to weights. I was addicted to, and I'm still addicted to weights. That's my best addiction, but it was the questions that came behind it afterwards, right? Because during the healing process, when I finally decided that I didn't want to do this, I tried doing AA. AA wasn't for me. I don't like being told.
Yeah.
Like I really don't like being told what to do. I don't like people trying to control me, right? And nor do I like to control other people. I just want people to be intentional and honest with me. When they don't do that, I don't want nothing to do with it, but it was the one question that gave me the most profound answer. When I asked why I am the way that I am, it took me going through the detoxing, because I was really bad. I was really, really bad. But I had to do it solo, meaning I locked myself in the house. I knew I had 3 days of going through a detox. I knew I didn't want to be around anyone. So I locked myself in the house and I went through it. I mean, the sweats, the shakes, everything. Third day, I didn't think I was going to make it, right? Like I was done. I was literally done. Mm-hmm. But I'm glad that I kept going, because after that, you know what I'm saying, I began to detox and became a different version of myself. And I asked that one vital question. I said, why am I the way that I am? Because I had violence too, right? I was very, very violent, Becky. Very. Like, I'm a battle dog. So anything that came my way, I was like, we're going to fight this one out. Win, lose, or draw. This is the way that it's going to be. But the answer that I got to that after some time, and it took me, I think it took me probably about a year or so after that answer. I kept beating on it, kept beating on it. And it finally said, because you're afraid. I said, what do you mean? Because you're afraid. I said, what am I afraid of? And it came back and it goes into a quote. It said, most people are afraid that when you look at them, that you see what they see when they look in a mirror.
Makes sense.
Right? And it's such a profound thing that I dove deeper into it. Clifton, how you doing, my brother? It's great to see you this morning, man. Yeah, man, we just doing another amazing show, another amazing conversation, man. Glad that you're here. Shy over on Instagram, thank you for tuning in. She's been a huge supporter of the channel as well. I'm pretty sure there's some other people in here, but hey, hey, guys, got any questions or comments? Put them in the comment section, man, and we're just going to keep it rolling. And so, going back, I want to pose that question to you. In your opinion, what do you think? What do you think causes a person to become addictive to that extreme, and not pay attention to the world around them? Because I know a lot of times people do it to escape the world.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, yeah. It's. I mean, I can't speak for everybody. I mean, I don't know, and I really can't even speak for my ex-husband. I can give you what I think was his. Why he ended up the way he did is no mystery. He was raised by functional alcoholics himself. And he, I think, had a core belief that he was worthless and that he wasn't deserving of love. And I think subconsciously he was trying to get me to leave him for years to prove to himself that his core beliefs that, I don't think were conscious, but just, unconscious operating system there, were accurate. And every time I would accept his apologies or excuse his behavior or, love him, it created an enormous cognitive dissonance in him. And he didn't know what to do with it. And so he kept upping the stakes, kept doing more and more egregious things until he finally hit something that I was just like, I'm out. I can't abide by this. You've turned into somebody that is unsafe to be around, and that is, the kids and I are afraid of you. And that's no, that's a hard no. It's tragic because it didn't have to be that way. But I couldn't make him face his own wounds and heal them.
Yeah. It's a sad thing when people do that. Now, I'm not one to put down anyone because I did the same thing, right? And I think you hit something on the head, and I want to put that out on the forefront. When you try to love him, things like that. When a person is raised around people who are functioning drug addicts or alcoholics, their form of love, it looks totally different from what you may be used to, right? And so it makes it really hard to distinguish what that looks like and what that's supposed to feel like, right? And so when things are unfamiliar, we tend to try to test it to see if it's real. I'm not understanding what we do to the other person, right? Because, and again, I'm not gonna put people's business out there. So I'm gonna put my own business out there. Once upon a time, I was engaged to get married. I was only engaged for 24 hours. Right. So another life lesson. I was only engaged we got engaged on a Sunday, and Monday when I got off of work, she had already cheated on me with one of my really good friends. 24 hours to the day.
Oh,
24 hours on the hour. I was like, wow, that didn't take that didn't take fucking long at all, right?
Mhm.
So, ever since then, um, I just kind of stopped believing in it. I stopped even think that it was possible. Now, it didn't stop me from trying, right? But what ended up happening is that I became a problem. I became a problem,
Mhm.
right? So I would meet these women, get into these falsified relationships, and I would give them anywhere from 6 to 8 months. After that, I'm done. I'm done. You gotta go, right? And I hurt a lot of people in the process, which is probably why karma still comes back and pays me a visit from time to time, just to remind me of the mistakes that I made. Now I don't mind because I need to pay for the things that I've done. You know, those people didn't deserve what I did to them, and I can hold myself accountable for those things, for my own actions. I wish I had the chance to apologize to them for the toxicity that I put into their life, but hopefully they understand. And most of them have moved on, gotten married, and things like that. So I do wish them a really good life. But it was the not understanding that my form of love was not love at all. Because most of the people that did show me love was people that was in the gangs, and you already know how that is. It was full of pain and chaos. Hell, some of the people that I cared about that I would have died for tried to kill me, twice. Right? The
Oof.
first time they set me up, the second time they tried to do it themselves.
Damn. That would
So
leave somebody with trust issues. Holy crap.
yeah, well, and and then on top of there, on top of there, like um, the relationships I got into after that, people don't understand the scars that came along with that. That I literally had to go in, and I tell people all the time, I have issues. I have issues, but not the issues that you think. I'm very observant. I watch people, and I move accordingly. So I let people do things to themselves, and then I just move out of their way and let them just do what they need to do. Like, hey, not a problem. I'm gonna go ahead and do my own thing. You do you, and I'm gonna do me. Okay, appreciate your time, but no more. Right? But I do give people the chance to do that. But it's a survival instinct that I picked up on. I'm very in tune and very intuitive with people, and so when people is off, well, I just let them be off. And the countless relationships I got in there. So if you want to know more issues, one of my relationships I was in with a racist. Didn't find that out until 3 months later until I
How
lost
does
everything.
that even happen? How do you get in that
Do
relationship
not,
to begin with?
do not ask me. I still to this day do not understand how that happened. I mean, and we actually dated for a year and a half, long distance, and
Did she never see you?
she never said anything. I'm black, okay, and you're a racist. So what are you doing with me? I'm thinking the people that you associate with may not be too happy with you if they find out that I'm black, okay. But I never put two and two together because it never came up and everything. I mean, good.
That's so
Now,
weird.
aside from the racist part, she was a hell of a woman. Right? She was good, and you know what I'm saying, and the relationship was going good long distancely. And then when I moved from here to South Dakota, it took 3 months, and it came out. It came out, and I was like, well, I guess it's time for me to go. So I just left my place, so I came back to Colorado. And 2 years after, I got into another relationship. Knew the girl for a little bit, and she was just annoying. Like she annoyed the crap out of me. And and then we was in a relationship for a year, and at the coming up on a year mark, she had revealed to me that she had slept with younger guys. And I was like, how young are you talking about? And when she revealed what she did, I was like, so you're a female pedophile. And I had to leave that one.
What kind of lessons does the universe think you need to learn, my guy? Holy crap.
Even now, man, even now, I'm just like, how strong do you want me to be? Right? And the universe is like, man, we're gonna see. And I just had to learn another valuable lesson. But this one I kind of saw as coming, and I kept warning the person, like, just so you know, when I pull the trigger, you're not going to be happy. I see what you're doing, and finally, I just was like, okay, this is a game you want to play. You play it by yourself. I'm done. And so so now I just made a choice of I'm not going to do it anymore. But in your own thought, when it comes to the addictive mind, what do you think drives most people to that point, right? Because most people would say that it's a disease. And some would say that it's inherited. Functional alcoholism.
Multifaceted, I think. I think that I've heard, but couldn't point to evidence that I remember thinking was compelling that there was a genetic component to it. And that is something that I have shared with my kids. I think it's a really bad idea for you guys to drink. I think that there is something to the idea that it's a disease as far as it begins with a choice and it ends with a choice. But in the middle, your brain, your nervous system, your chemistry, and all that other stuff is totally jacked up by the substance, by the responses in your body to whatever you're imbibing in. But I think it's a coping strategy. I think it's a coping strategy for enormous pain that you don't want to face.
Yeah, it is.
And it's a terrible strategy, but it works initially.
It does. And the problem is, I think what the problem is that once you start, you get that little relief, that numbness, right, where you don't have to deal with, you don't have to deal with the problems or the emotions that come along with it. And then it starts off really, really small. I know for me it did, and then after that, I had no stop button tolerance for alcohol. And in the beginning, it was just like, okay, I could drink a little bit here, I could drink a little bit there, and life just kept pouring it on me. After seeing so many people die, and just it was just a sequence of events in my life. And the beautiful thing about it is that I'm glad I had to go through it alone. The problem is just I just got used to being alone. But it was how I coped. And then over a period of time, I would go, I'm gonna get a 6-pack, maybe a bottle of Crown Royal, right? And I would drink 4 out of the 6-pack, maybe half of the Crown Royal, and I liked it. Mm-hmm. So then after that, I got used to drinking the full 6-pack, and then I got used to drinking the full bottle of Crown Royal, the smaller ones, and I did that for a little bit. Then I was like, I need more, right? So that 6-pack turned into 12, and then the 24, 32-pack, and then then a bottle of Crown turned into a bottle of vodka, and then a bottle of tequila, then a bottle of Jack Daniels. And then I would get the 32-pack, and then I would get 6 of the tall boys, and and it just increased. And then I went from drinking 12 hours to 15 to 16 to 22 hours out of the day, and I would sleep for 2, get back up, finish off what I had the night before, go to work, go to the store on my break, get the little 6-pack or 12-pack shooters and everything, go back to work, drink those while I'm at work, get off work, go to the bar, and I would spend $5 on a pitcher, learn how to play pool really good. I would back the pool hall, drink that, wash, rinse, repeat. right? And that's who I was. That's who I was. I made the conscious choice to do this because I was afraid that people would see the pain that I was carrying, and that how damaged I was. And so this was my way of saying, just stay away from me. I knew what I was doing, right? And I knew if people saw me doing this, no one would want to have anything to do with me. In a lot of ways, I was okay with that, right? Because then I didn't have to explain what had happened to me. Because I was ashamed of what I had to go through. I wasn't ashamed of the things I had to do in order to survive. But I learned how to keep myself safe. That's one of my defense mechanisms, is that I'm really good at keeping myself safe from things, and I really wish in so many ways I didn't have to be that way, but I am, right? Yeah,
that rings true.
Yeah. So before we begin to wrap this up, what are your thoughts on
that? That sounds exactly like the story. I mean, it seems like I could go into a room with 10 other women who also loved and left alcoholics. And while the details would be different, the stories would all be the same. I could say something, or she could say something, or she could say something, and we'd all go like, yep, that sounds exactly right. My ex-husband, I know he didn't set out to have what he has right now be his life. And it breaks my heart, but it's also a culmination of his choices.
Yeah.
He was probably already an alcoholic when we met in college, but we were in the Greek system at the University of Washington, and I was the only sober person I knew most of the time. It didn't seem weird. And he was able to keep his addiction under control for like 20 years. And it wasn't, we'd have spikes of problems. And if I had been more aware of how addiction works, and more aware of mental health problems, and more aware of my own attachment wounds and my own issues that were feeding into that as well, I would have recognized it a lot sooner. But because he was so functional, and he was overwhelmingly a really good husband and a really good father, I didn't see it, and I didn't want to see it. But as soon as he started unraveling, I was baffled, and I turned into, I was like WebMD here. I'm trying Googling his symptoms and trying to figure out what's going on with him, doing more work on him than he is, and it's crazy. I think that he loved me and our kids, and maybe he still does, but he doesn't love himself. In fact, he hates himself, and he couldn't take our love. And so he made it so that we had to leave.
Wow.
That's what I think.
I tell you, every time I talk to people, y'all stories just keep inspiring myself, and I'm sure the audience as well, because I know there's a lot of people out there that can relate to the things that you guys go through. Now, as we begin to wrap this up, I only have one more question for you and everything. And for everyone who's been tuning in, if you guys enjoyed the story, please go check out her information is in the YouTube channel and everything. So one question for you: if you had a superpower, what would it be?
If I had a superpower, my superpower is facilitation. I love to connect people with other people and resources that they need in order to be successful. And I'm good at it, and I love doing it. But as far as like a superpower, I think I'm going to steal my son's idea for superpower. He wants to be able to fill anything up with whatever he wants to fill it up with at any given point in time. So, and of course, people think, fill up the wallet with money or whatever. But his twisted mind, love him, goes to, if I'm talking to somebody and I don't really want to be talking to them anymore, I can just, fill up their bladder so that they have to go excuse themselves to go use the bathroom.
There's something wrong with you. That's not even right. That's not even right. Oh my God. I'm staying away from you, Becky. Like, oh, yeah.
Hey, that's my kid, not me, but I'm like, yeah.
That's freaking hilarious. That's freaking hilarious. Oh my God. And with that being said, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap this episode up. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed it. If you just now tuning in, you'd like to go back, please go back to the YouTube channel. Just if this is your first time, it's down below. And thank you for everyone who has been donating to the channel as well. That's been freaking phenomenal. The Cash App, keep it rolling, because it just helps me be able to keep the channel, keep bringing content to you guys. All right. And we're just going to keep growing. Maybe, somebody who will benefit from the conversations that we have too. Please share this along with them. And also, big update, right? So tomorrow's the day that we drop the magazine. It is a digital copy. I will be putting a link out there so you guys can go in there and just check it out. It's freaking amazing. We got a lot of great things, and also, we got a very special letters to loved one that you guys are going to see at the end, at the back of the magazine. We have podcasts, we have articles, we have events that are in there, right? And it's. Guys, you guys are going to love this. I'm going to keep it dropping for you guys as well. Also, keep your eye out. We have the new program coming out, which is the Grief Conference program that's going to be coming out in November. We also have, I also have the graphic novel, The Adventures of Grief Guide, that is going to be dropping real soon. But I'm going to break it down into a 12-part series. You guys are going to be able to enjoy The Adventures of Grief Guide, and then the app, the Global Grief app that I'm putting together.
Hello, Superman here.
So, I do have to jump off conversation, and you guys, we're going to see you guys in the next one, man. Love you guys, and thank you for your continued support. All right. Peace.